Hello, my fellow Extraordinary Americans. I'm Samaddar, and this is Extraordinary America. What is Extraordinary America about? You see, American identity is about freedom, the opportunity for a better life, and the pursuit of happiness. However, most Americans are not free when it comes to the financial front. Most Americans are suffering from financial slavery due to loss of jobs, stagnant wages, inflation, and debt of all kinds. Wealth and income inequality runs rampant across America, and the middle class is all but disappeared. So what is Extraordinary America about? Extraordinary America is about the abolition of financial slavery. It is about the financial freedom of the 99%. It is about the nation of immigrants and descendants of immigrants awakening and unleashing the extraordinary within themselves and setting themselves free. The path to financial freedom is through entrepreneurship and investing on the light side. It is about financial education, not only when it comes to money in the monetary systems, but also in regards to how to start a business, investing, especially when it comes to precious metals and real estate. In this podcast, I interview guests, many of whom came from humble beginnings, to see how they did it and how they attained financial freedom in their own lives and how they did business. And it is my hope that you will be inspired and you will want to awaken extraordinary within yourselves and realize the American dream. Once again, welcome to Extraordinary America. Dr. Matt, are you there?
Hey Cosmos, how's it going?
It's going amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Matt, for taking the time to do this podcast with us. I'm truly honored. Can you tell me and the audience a little bit more about yourself, your background, and how you got started?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out in the defense industry. I really was working on cool things. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do when I was a kid, but I knew it had to be something in probably in technology related, something pretty mathy and challenging. And I started out actually working in defense, and I was ended up doing that for quite a long time. I was working on some very advanced weapon systems, some very advanced missiles and so forth. And then yeah, so got my self started in that, and basically thought I'd never leave defense. Then I had the opportunity kind of a little bit later in my career to make a pivot. So I made a pivot from defense into the weird world of self-driving cars. And then just one thing led to another after that. I did that for a while, uh, built a radar division for another company that was in the self-driving car space. And then the beginning of last year pivoted again to work with this company I'm leading now called Spartan Radar. So it's really it's a great opportunity and it's a great journey that I've had so much fun doing each and every part of it.
So, Dr. Matt, this is like self-driving cars is still a new concept to many people. I'm going to ask you a little bit about that later. But what was your strategic vision from the time you were in defense industry to like where you're now, and how did it evolve over the years, like regarding your career?
So that's a great point. I think some people maybe they're a lot smarter than me, but there some people seem to have like this vision from like the maybe the time they're in first grade or second grade or something like that. They know exactly what they're going to be doing. And that wasn't me at all. I even in the last 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, etc. I the strategic vision for me hasn't been nearly as much about what I'm doing as how I'm doing it. And I think that that's really, if there's one strategic vision, it's like in everything I do, try to do it very, very well, try to learn as much as possible, try to make as many connections as I possibly can, and and learn from it, make the most out of each opportunity. You never know what's going to happen next, or at least I sure as heck didn't. Like I said, maybe there's a lot smarter people than me that had their whole life planned out, but I didn't. I just basically in everything you have, make the most out of it, and that will lead to more opportunities. And I think that if there's one strategic vision is like make the most out of everything, because that will lead to great things that follow that, and that will lead to more and more great things.
I see. So, Dr. Matt, what was like your all throughout your career? What was the motivation factor that keeps you going? Because like different people have different motivations and different whys. But what was it for you that made you so successful in what you're doing?
That's a great question. I think kind of two things. One is I've always liked to work in industries and in opportunities where you're doing something that's bigger than you. Right. So for the first almost 30 years of my career, I was working in defense. And that's super important. That keeps our land safe. You know, obviously on a show like yours, you know, keeping America safe. That's very important. I had so many friends that were in the active duty and worked in the many were deployed, that you know you think of it becomes very personal. What you're doing is helping keeping them safe. I remember when I was just starting out, I had a friend who was an F-15 pilot, and I would think about what I was doing because I was working on basically missiles that went on that jet and would help protect them if they met the bad guys. And I was like, yeah, I'm keeping my friend the fighter pilot safe with what I'm doing. So always work on something that's bigger than you. That's a bigger purpose. And the second thing is that in everything you do, do it with excellence. Basically, you how much can you do with what you've been given, and how much more can you do with what you've been given? So those are kind of the two overarching principles I would say for me.
Dr. Matt, that is amazing. And you're totally right. Whenever you have a why that's about something that is bigger than yourself or just money, like it just fuels so much of like your path and purpose. And I couldn't agree more. And that's something that I want the audience to know, that you have to know your why. And ideally, it has to be something bigger than yourself, you know? So,
Yeah,
Dr.
absolutely. And it doesn't have to be the same why all the time. You know, like I served defense, right? I love that industry. Working in the self-driving car industry is equally as important because it's something bigger than you. You might say, like, wait a minute, that's just some goofy tech up in Silicon Valley. But when you think about it and you actually look at the numbers, we lose in the United States about 43,000 people every year on the roads. 43,000 lives lost. And to put that in perspective, most people don't know how to fathom that a number like that. But that's the same number as we lose due to breast cancer. So basically, the number of people that die in traffic crashes is equal to the same number that die due to breast cancer. So if self-driving cars can take a bite out of that, then that's an industry that's doing something good for society. Then in the industry I am now, basically helping to make automobiles safer, again, to take a bite out of that, but also make commercial vehicles safer. So things that are for the big box trucks or off-road vehicles or construction. So again, always working in something that's bigger than you. But it doesn't have to be the same thing, the same bigger than you thing throughout your entire career.
No, I mean, it's true. And like the entire concept of like saving lives, it is a deep motivational factor in itself. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know about that stat that 43,000 people died in on the roads. That's a lot, you know. So, Dr. Matt, one of the things I wanted to ask you, right, was you've been both an investor and a leader in the corporate world. Like, how do you balance these competing desires?
Yeah, so it's always good to kind of like use two parts of your brain and to be able to go back and forth between different things. Back when I was in living in Florida, I was both, and actually when I was living in Los Angeles, I was doing this as well. I was both working as an engineer in the corporate world, and I was a gigging and recording musician. So, which is you're like, wait a minute, that's pretty diverse things there, but it's actually great because you use one part of your brain and one set of skills, one set of social skills, one set of like how you interact with other people when you're working a job, especially in defense in corporate America. An entirely different set of skills and parts of your brain and how you interact with people and how you are on stage when you're a musician as well. So that way of balancing one versus the other, so you're not just using one part of your brain and kind of sticking with that. I've really been, enjoyed the success that at least for me personally, that brings, the balance that it brings with you. The other, it keeps you from going on like weird tangents if you just think of things like one way the same all the time. Um, so, the investor and being a leader in the corporate world is very similar too. When you're an investor, you have to take in as much data as possible, as quickly as possible, as you can make a decision on something. But there's a ton of uncertainty. There's a ton of unknowns, and you have to be very comfortable with that. As a CEO, there's still a lot of uncertainty as well. But it's a little bit better because you've got your hand on the stick, and you can see if I move this way, the company reacts this way, the customers react this way, et cetera. So yeah, more data to use, but it's a different aspect of your mind.
That's really interesting, Dr. Matt. And I know throughout your career you have like done a lot of there were like been some major pivots that you did, right? Like what was the reason for you pivoting, and also how do you manage to multitask and like organize the different like whenever you're going to like a different sector of the industry?
So the one of my friends uses a phrase like, if you don't feel imposter syndrome about every 18 months, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And I think that that's just a super useful, motivating thing. It's so easy to get comfortable, to get good at something, pretty good at something, and maybe make a little bit more money doing it. You become the go-to guy, and all of a sudden that becomes a very comfortable situation. You get pretty good at it, you continue to add more and more value. But what I found is you have to push yourself out of that. And so I made several different pivots. One of them was, uh, when I went back to school, in my 30s to get a PhD. So which is quite a bit older than like most people that go up and get that earn their doctorate. I pivoted from the Air Force Research Lab to Raytheon, to going from being on the government side of things to being on the industry side of things. And in doing so, moved my wife of 2 months, 3 months, 2 months. We've been married 2 months. Moved from Florida to Los Angeles. So that was a
Wow.
pretty big pivot. And then I've got, I think I mentioned earlier, the pivoting from defense to commercial to the self-driving car industry. I've been in defense at that point for almost 30 years. I was pretty well known in certain intelligence communities and certain technology communities and stuff. So I was pretty well known. And to go into the self-driving car space where nobody knew me, not anybody. I didn't done anything in the commercial side before. So what does that do? That scares the daylights out of you. But it forces you to like really get back to your core of proving yourself and keeping yourself from getting too comfortable in things. So yeah, so that's kind of why I did it. It keeps you, it keeps pushing yourself. And again, like I said earlier, part of what the strategy for me is to keep seeing how far can we go with what we've been given.
So, Dr. Matt, if somebody, let's say, is suffering from an imposter syndrome, or like they're too afraid to be uncomfortable on a console level, because this requires a certain level of discomfort, how would you go about advising such a person on like overcoming this?
So the you don't get away from that feeling of doubt, and you don't get away from that feeling of the imposter syndrome. It just, at least for me, I still get it. I was like, oh my gosh, sometimes as even in certain things I'm really good at. I was like, yeah, eventually they're gonna find out I'm really not all that good at it. So I get this, kind of these weird things. But I think that everybody does that. And that's what I would say to someone. It's like, I'm not gonna make your feelings go away, but I am gonna tell you that you're not alone in feeling them. And at least in my experience, those that are successful push themselves through that. And then, it doesn't get any easier, but you start building up these successes and say like, well, this may not be exactly the same situation, but that time when I left the lab to go to Raytheon, to go into the industry side, I was okay when I did that. That worked out all right. And the time I left, went into the self-driving cars, well, that was okay. So basically, everyone feels that way. And once you've done it a few times, you kind of build up this sense of like, okay, yeah, it still feels kind of sucky, but I've I know that feeling and I've gone through it before, and it's, at least statistically, it's probably going to be okay.
I mean, thank you, Dr. Matt, for explaining that because that is one of the main things that stop people from being successful. Like there's a number of fears that people have, like they're not good enough, or are they like faking it or something, and like that prevents them from getting to the next level. And so this definitely helps. But Dr. Matt, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, from your perspective, what is the most important skill that a CEO of a company should have in order to be successful in their career?
Yeah, I think there's several things that you want to have. Um, you really need to have this combination of perseverance and attitude, and I think that the probably the number one thing I would say is perseverance, but like kind of a number two right after that is attitude. And let me explain. So first of all, in a lot of the stuff as a leader of a company, it's going to suck. I mean, I hate to burst somebody's bubble and so forth. Like, I'm going to go start my own company and or lead a company where it's all fantastic all the time, and I'm going to be doing podcasts and I'm going to be doing all these shows and it's going to be great. And no, most of the time, where are you going? You're going where the problems are because they need you to help solve the problems. So you don't get to experience all the good times. You're spending a lot of time dealing with problems and difficult things and figuring out, this is a pretty tough economic time we're in right now. How are we going to make it through? What are the right investments we need to make? Shoot, what if I choose wrong? All these sorts of things. So it's really, it's you have to persevere through that. Perseverance is like the absolute number one skill that you have. But a very, very close second, very, very close second is attitude. Because when you think about it, yes, you could look at all those sucky things. It's like, oh yeah, and let yourself get really down. But you have an incredible opportunity as a leader to impact not only the lives of every person that works on your team, to basically by your example, help them to be better and help your company to be better, but also for whatever your company's mission is, that's going to have a potentially a big impact on society. And you get to lead the team through that. So yes, you're doing a lot of sucky stuff, but also realize that there's this super great opportunity. I wake up every morning just feeling incredibly blessed that I have this opportunity. And so it's the perseverance, because it is going to suck, but realizing that it's also super awesome, and focus on the awesome aspect of it, not the sucky aspect of it, and you'll be okay. So that's like number one, or like number one and like number 1A. Couple other things is I would say that it's, remember that you're always on stage. So as the leader of a company, you don't get to really have a bad day. You have a very, very small inner circle that you can vent to, but but you can't be letting your emotions show through, in terms of how you lead the company. You want to be vulnerable, you want to be open, but you also can't be, because you had a bad day, you could be, taking it out on people or letting that impact your thoughts. So you're always on stage. Is like kind of like number two. The third thing I'd say is like seek out advice from others. Many situations others have gone through, and you might not take their advice, but at least you should know what they did. I'm I can't actually say it, but I'm, my company's doing something right now. And I've been talking to like several other of my close friends that are in kind of different industries. I'm like, hey, we're going to be doing this thing. And do you know anybody that's done that before? Because I want to hear what their stories are. So find people that have gone through things before, and seek out their advice. And the last thing is like, when you're building a team, absolutely focus on hiring A players. Otherwise, you'll always be pulling them, as opposed to what you really want is like them to be pushing the company, them to be pushing everybody, even you. But if you hire B or C players, you're gonna always be like pulling them along, and it's not gonna be fun. So there's a lot of stuff on there about at least setting up these processes, that like, oh, you don't need to hire A players. Instead, you should develop, enduring processes. That's fine if you know all the answers and everything's already done. But really, in technology, in in most industries, that's not, just like kind of a rinse and repeat. You need A players because you don't know what all the answers are. You need to be figuring things out along the way. So having the best team possible is super important.
So, Dr. Matt, you're completely right. Like perseverance and having the right attitude, it plays a huge role because I mean, attitude, I would actually want to argue that our attitude is everything. Like how you see the world. Like you can look at the problem and you can see a barrier or you can see an opportunity. And I know
Mhm.
one of the things I noticed amongst people that I interviewed is that they see problems as opportunities and from which they can jump into the next level, and whereas most people see them as barriers. So it's an interesting thing that came to my mind, you know?
Absolutely. And it's, really, it's as much for your ability to execute and your ability to lead the team as it is for you too. I mean, the what you focus on expands, right? If you're focusing on negativity, you're going to be negative. If you're focusing on the blessings and the opportunities and how awesome it is, yeah, it's tough. But it's if you're focusing on that, then your head's in a much better space and you'll enjoy your life a lot more. So it's as much for you as it is for everybody else.
No, totally, Dr. Matt. And Dr. Matt, one of the things I wanted to ask you was in your throughout your career, what was the greatest lesson or revelation you had regarding just business, investing, leadership, and just human nature in general?
Yeah, one of the things, I don't know if it's the greatest, but one of the things that's just definitely true is that I use this phrase, and it's kind of like a spin on Ecclesiastes. It's basically the sun that shone on our fathers shines on us today. That basically there is kind of some pretty deep human ways of seeing things. And if you can kind of learn about those and learn how humans think and humans see and humans react, not only will you know yourself better, but you'll also know the the people you're dealing with, maybe the people you're negotiating with. You'll know your staff better. So really try to understand how people see things. I started out my career as an engineer, and I was actually an engineer for a good portion of my career. And it's in that you're pretty much taught to think very cut and dry. This is the equation. This is the relationship between these two things, and boil it down to a science like that. And you often miss out on these aspects of like, well, humans don't think like that. They don't behave like that. So it took me for a while to kind of catch the wave on like, people are different. And then even just the concept of taking like the first personality assessment test, and I realized that like, because it's crystal clear the way I see things because it's me, but other people will see things in a dramatically different way, and that's just the way that they're wired. So realizing that not everyone sees the world the same way was huge. It was huge. I didn't, they don't teach you that in engineering school. They're teaching you equations and math and physics and all sorts of other like electrical engineering and V equals IR and a bunch of other stuff. So that aspect of like really trying to understand people it's just super important, super important.
So, Dr. Matt, like I was studying electrical engineering when I was in university, right? And one of the
Mhm.
greatest revelations I had at that time was when you're with people, there are some people that will like you for no reason, and there are other people that will see the exact same personality, which is you, and then they'll just like you. So that it's just like you're the same person, but they're like two different groups of people or multiple different groups of people, and they'll perceive you in completely different ways. And that was also one of the greatest revelations I had during my entire life, actually. That sometimes like people interact with you with their like and dislike for you has nothing really to do with you, but to do with their perception of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. There could be some cognitive bias. You could remind them of a positive experience from the past. You could remind them of a negative experience from the past. You could be you could be presenting things in a way that they just intrinsically resonate with, or you could be presenting them in a way that is that is just completely the opposite of the way that they're wired to think. You know, if you start talking about very uh, big picture, lofty ideas and without a lot of specifics and without even, with a lot of like, okay, we're gonna have to, figure some stuff out along the way, but notionally, this is kind of what I'm thinking. You talk that to a very particular type of engineer, that's not going to resonate because they're going to be like, all right, I don't see how we get from this step to this step, and for that reason, I'm out. They just, it won't resonate. Whereas if you started taking a very detailed engineering plan from that person and presenting it to the guy who sees like just the big picture sort of things, they're like, dude, I cannot handle all these details. I don't know where we're going. You've got one from like step 1.1.2 to 1.1.3. I want to know what step 50 is, because that's the way I'm wired to think. So it's really, really just how, so people like you, people dislike you, could be cognitive bias from the past, could be how you're presenting things. Does that resonate with how they're thinking about things? It could be having a bad day too. Just, that's just sometimes that's the way humans see things. So, you could be tired and having a bad day. So, but realizing, like what you said is spot on. Realizing that people are different is huge.
No, totally. It was something that just literally blew my mind back in the day. But Dr. Matt, one of the things I wanted to ask you was if you could take a time machine and you could go back to a younger version of yourself, like before you started your career, like maybe like you were in the college days or something, how would you go about advising such a person regarding the future, and like what would you tell them to do differently?
So I probably I would tell them to do. So if it was me specifically, so I'll talk about me specifically and then what I tell when I talk to like earlier career folks and kind of what I tell them. But me specifically, there's I got asked this on a show once. It was like, what do you wish you would not have done? And I was like, you know, I can't think of really anything. Uh, the what would I have given up on? What piece of experience do I not want to have that would have learned from that could be make me who I am today? Now, granted, I would say that obviously if I were to give myself some advice, is number one, you know spend time with people, be more present for people. We get, or especially early career, we get so focused on things, and you don't get people back. So that's one of the things I would have said. um the maybe sometimes the extra minute with somebody and really make a connection. Much more, I would have told myself specifically, much more uh, focus a lot more on relationships and really go deeper on those. And then the last thing I would say to myself would be like, kind of trust yourself more. The and then we'll talk in a second about like what I tell other people. But it's just, think about, for me. So I grew up kind of like my impressionable years were like in the 1980s. So so I started high school in 82 and college in 86 and graduated with my undergrad in 1990. And who are the big influencers in that time frame? Alex P. Keaton, and Gordon Gekko. So that's what so the concept of like corporate America and functioning in that was like really really big for me. And
Were you
and
influenced by the entire greed is good philosophy?
love it. It's and still to this day, it's which actually, probably beyond the scope of what we have time for today, but there's very interesting human psyche related things about acting in if everyone acts in their own self-interest, and how that kind of mutually might balance some things out. But anyway, and the fallacy of like believing that people ever don't act in some, at least some partially self-serving way. But anyway, the but trust in yourself more. I had a lot of self-doubt when I was younger. I used to look at all these different things like, a true story. I remember thinking like right when I got my undergrad, it's like, these people that had a doctorate, they have like this absolute smartest ever. And there's no way, I remember distinctly thinking there's no way I could ever get a PhD. I could never get a doctorate. Nope, 100% never end the conversation. And you know, and I was kind of wired weird. It was like if something was easy for me, I just assumed that it was like easy for everybody. So it's this weird thing. So I had a lot of kind of like self-doubt to overcome. I definitely, because I could never be the VP of an organization and build an entire division. I could never be the president of or a CEO of a corporation. Or I could never be an advisor to a business or have the guts to help get a hedge fund off the ground, or convince organizations to invest millions of dollars in a company that I'm running. But I did all those things. So, and I think in many of the cases I've done them, fairly well. So for me, I would have said trust in yourself more. Now, what I tell other people, I mean, I'll tell them all that too. But they're probably wired maybe a little bit different than me, and they maybe trust themselves a little bit more from the start anyway. But I will tell them to absolutely make the most out of every day. So each day that you have is an opportunity, and you can do this much or you can do this much. Actually, in my planner that I use, I try to make a note of like, how am I going to move the needle that day? How specifically am I going to move? Not just how am I going to go meetings or what am I going to do to move the needle? And if you think about that, so if you do that every day, so you're going to move the needle a little bit every day, then that's going to get you to a certain point, and over months, years, maybe in some cases, you'll have gotten this far. Someone else who's maybe not quite as dedicated, maybe moves the needle once a week, is down here. So you're here, or they're here, you're up here. Now, who's going to get the next opportunity? Is it going to be this guy or you? So you get the next opportunity. Now you're playing on a different field, right? Now you're playing with maybe some better players. Maybe you're playing with some on a more grandiose scale of investment opportunities, whatever. So now, same thing. Keep moving the needle more and more every day there. It just opens up more and more opportunities. So when people that are earlier in their careers are young, they think of, we've got all this time and I can, I may want to work hard, I may not want to work hard. But it's absolutely critical to let that that compounding effect build up, and it comes from like basically moving the needle every day. So if there's that's one advice I give to every single early career person, is like make the most out of every day.
Thank you so much for that advice, Dr. Matt. It's really interesting how like these like when we have the right mindset, we can just attain so much success, and it's just these small things that we are doing every day that gets us to that level, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, Dr. Matt, throughout your entire career, like when were the times that you were like the happiest? Because like I know you're doing all these great things, but like how do you find happiness in your life?
So that's actually, like I said, sometimes I'm wired kind of weird. So for me, like the happiest I am is when I'm about to win, but it actually hasn't happened yet. So maybe it's like the anticipation. So it's almost like I can see towards the end of the game, and this could be in business, this could be in like in a game or something like that. I can see the remaining moves, and I know there's nothing anybody can do to beat me. So and at that point, I'm the happiest. And also at that point, I kind of clock out, because it's like I've got this thing won, and I'm already looking to the next thing. Like almost every, I don't think I've told a lot of people this, almost every like celebration party for something, I'm only marginally interested in it, because at that point, by the time we have a celebration party, I've already mentally way moved on to the next thing. For me, it's like as soon as I know that I'm going to win, then it's like, okay, done, good, what's next? So it's kind of weird. Like with my doctorate, graduation was really cool, but as soon as I knew that I had kind of nailed the defense, I was like, all right, this is done. What's next? I had to figure out how to do some weird latex stuff because my dissertation wasn't compliant by university publication standards, so I had to do some stuff, and I wasn't really a good LaTeX, like the publishing languages you have to use, that we had to use at Florida. And so that was a little bit of a worry. But once I got that figured out, then it's like, moved on. But for me, so I always have to watch that, like to make sure that I don't lose interest in things. But to me, right now, what I try to do is instead of it being like the big waiting for the big win and being happy there, is to really trying to enjoy things as I'm going along. We talked about attitude earlier, and just basically taking the time to realize just how freaking awesome this is today. What is this, the 18th of March, the day after St. Pat's, right? How awesome today is and how awesome tomorrow is, and trying to be a little bit better at enjoying that, as opposed to trying to like wait for the big wins. And basically by then I've kind of lost interest anyway.
So, Dr. Matt, like the American national identity, part of it is about the pursuit of happiness. So, from your perspective, how do you think Americans can be more happier in their lives?
So one thing, so first of all, humans aren't really good at absolutes, right? What are we good at? We're good at relative things, right? If you make, I don't know, pick a number. If you make 100 grand a year, is that good? Is that bad? It only makes a difference, or actually the only way you really answer that is like, well, what do these other people make? If everybody in your circle makes 30 grand and you're making 100 grand a year, that's really good, right? That's pretty freaking awesome. If you're living in Silicon Valley, where I lived for a while, and you're making 100 grand, you're not doing so good, right? And because no one else, because lots of folks there make quite a bit more, at least in the tech space. So everything's relative. So, and just to put that in perspective, so if you think of the most successful person on Earth at one end of the spectrum. Okay, and it used to be Bill Gates, and then maybe Bezos. I don't know who it is now. Who the most successful person on the face of the earth is on one end of the spectrum, and then the most worse off person in like the most desolate third world country on the other end of the spectrum. Okay, so think of that whole spectrum. Almost everybody is like right here, a lot closer to the richest guy than to the poorest guy. And I think when we think about that here in the States, that can kind of help us reset our need for always comparing ourselves to that neighbor next door or that guy next to me, but instead thinking about where we are in the macro scale, like things pretty amazingly good here. And when you kind of view it from that perspective, instead of viewing it as things like the things that aren't right, view it as like like these 2 or 3 things aren't great. View it as like the thousands or tens of thousands of things that are. And that, to me, helps you get a much better view on life and be able to be a lot happier.
No, I mean, you're totally right about the relative factor. Like, you can look at the same thing, and you can look at 100 grand as like some people will make them really happy, and other people will just make them miserable. But it's all about relativity. But we have to like learn not to like our happiness should come from like something that is more internal, and like we should not be attached to those things, because that'll make us deeply happy if we just compare ourselves to other people in that regard.
Absolutely. Yeah, run your own race. Run your own race.
Yeah, for sure. And Dr. Matt, you've been in this technology sector, right? And like technology, the hybrid of technology and business. So where do you see America's future with regards to technology and business, and how do you perceive that?
So that's a great question. Very, very loaded question. I think America's pretty big, right? So there's lots of different sectors, lots of different things going on in there. So it's hard to aggregate it, because it is so large. It's hard to say like, one answer that fits all. We're still pretty dominant leaders in a lot of things, but I think what happens a lot of times is maybe because we've lived in relative peacetime for so long, is we kind of sometimes lose that edge a little bit. and we add on more regulations and add on more things that slow us down, and add on more ways to not move as fast or as strongly as we could. So, I think that there's, we have lots of opportunities here, lots of bright people, lots of great universities, lots of great companies doing great things, but it's increasingly frightening to see how we can get in our own way of inhibiting progress. If you look at, like, in the self-driving industry, my company now develops technologies that work across the autonomy spectrum, not just for full self-driving, but across basically things that help out driver assist features as well. But I'm still very much plugged into the autonomy space, the self-driving car space. You look at what kind of California is doing on some things, and they're always like one regulation away from basically shutting the whole thing down. And because of being short-sighted and letting one particular interest group dominate the entirety of the conversation, as opposed to thinking about the number of lives that can be saved and the number of jobs that can be created and so forth. So yeah, so I think we've got a lot of things going for us, but we need to make sure we don't get in our own way on it and slow ourselves down.
No, I mean, yeah, like a lot of times when we have adversity, that's when we perform our best. Like, yeah, I think this person I talked to told me about this successful entrepreneur. He told me that sometimes we only do our best when we have a have to situation. And then
Mhm.
like it just for some reason unleashes the superhuman in us. And I didn't really know what it meant completely until I started like thinking about it. And I realized that most of us we reach our full potential only when we have to and when there's like an
Yeah,
adversity. And it's like one of the strangest things ever, you know?
but the people talk about if you only have to make X amount, you'll make about X amount, right? If you need to make more, you'll find a way to make more. But it's yeah. So just keeping ourselves from shooting ourselves in the foot with regard to the technology. Technology, I think, is probably the big caution I would say that I'm a little bit worried about for us.
So, Dr. Matt, could you tell us a little bit more about Spartan Radar and the premise of how you started it and all of that?
So absolutely. So I didn't start the company. The board of directors brought me in to take the company to the next level, kind of do a turnaround on it, and then take it to the next level. But the company is really interesting. It was actually founded by several folks that used to work for me or work with me when I was at Raytheon, and I had I'd kind of kept in touch with them along the way as they were doing things in the company, and I came by, a couple of years ago and kind of looked over what they were doing and gave them some advice on, like, well, I wouldn't do this, I would do this, etc. And but then this opportunity came in the like Q1 of last year of 2023, and they said, like, the board said, like, look, we want you to come in. Uh, Basically, like I said, do a turnaround and then take the company to the next level. If you're a fan of crossing the chasm, cross the chasm on revenue. Start bringing in money, getting people to pay for these products, moving from R&D to a product centered company. So that's what I'm doing now. And the company basically it develops radar technology to make things better for mobility, whether it's moving people around, like helping to save those 43,000 lives that are lost every year, or everything on the commercial vehicle side, which can be construction, agriculture, mining, forestry, over-the-road applications like that Amazon Prime truck that drops off all that stuff that we buy, to long-haul Class 8, even to in warehouse material handling like forklifts, so forth. So we make technology for that, and yeah, and it's great. We've got products now. We're starting to sell things. We've got some strategic deals lined up, and it's super exciting. Lots of balls in the air, but it's great. And I've got a good team that's just continuing to get better as I bring in more world-class talent, yeah, I'm gonna make this into something hopefully pretty awesome.
That is awesome, Dr. Matt. And Dr. Matt, I know you also wrote a book about like you authored the radar for fully autonomous driving. Could you tell the audience a little bit more about like that and what it's about?
So sure, I wrote that back. I started, I think, in 2020, and at that point, I was with Waymo, which was the Google self-driving car company, and I was I was good friends with the series editor for this one publisher, and for our tech house, and he reached out and said like, hey, why don't they actually reached out to me a couple years ago. It's like, why don't you write a book for radar for self-driving cars? I was like, nope, not interested at all. Just too much work, and it's not gonna, you don't make a whole lot unless you're like, you know, Grisham or something like that. You don't make a whole lot of money writing books. So it's like just the ROI on this is like not gonna work itself out. So they came back later, and this is kind of a funny story, I guess, sort of funny. They said like, so we got this deal for you. So you be the editor of the book, and you get all your friends to write chapters. All right. And what we'll do is like, since you're the editor, you're the only one we pay. So we'll pay you, and they'll do all the work. And I was like, all right, well, uh,
Wow.
is that really, is it gonna play out like that? But anyway, at the time, like I said, I was working for Waymo, and what we decided to do, and I had to pitch it to my company. It's like, I'm going to do this. It's like, if I can put the insight out there, the information out there, so somebody can make a radar that's better, that helps keep maybe even a competitor's self-driving car company, but it keeps them from having an accident, it saves a life, and it's better for the industry, because accidents will slow down the industry's the adoption rate of the public and the adoption rate of the regulatory officials. So it'll be good for the industry if I do this, and it might save some lives along the way too. Okay, so the company said yes, do it, and I started talking to friends of mine all over the globe. I'm pretty well connected in the radar space, and we just got a complete awesome who's who of authors on there. I wrote some of the chapters. I co-wrote some of the chapters. I had folks from academia writing, folks from several of the big companies, Bosch, NXP, Waymo obviously wrote. Another startup called Under was writing things, and Rodian Schwartz, who's huge in the test community. They make a lot of the as a young doubly, you probably remember like the Rodian Schwartz test equipment and stuff like that. So just awesome who's who of things. Folks from writing safety stuff too. But the concept of like, they'll do all the work and you'll be the only one who gets paid. It didn't play out of that at all, because basically it was like 12 books that you have to be in charge of, because each chapter was different, but it turned out it was absolutely awesome. And because not only did we make a fantastic product that was really, really good for the industry, but also it helped me develop better relationships with a lot of different people, and really take our relationships to to a new level by working hand in hand with them on that. And just to circle back on the money before you think I'm some like just complete jerk store that's making a lot of coin off of the hard work of these other folks. I donate 100% of the proceeds. 100. I don't make a dime off this book. 100% of the proceeds go to an organization here in Dallas, where I live, that supports STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, to support STEM education efforts. So basically, I donate 100% of the money to basically pass it on to the next generation.
Dr. Matt, that is amazing, and we appreciate that a lot. And so, Dr. Matt, how can our audience connect with you and get to know more about you and your work and everything you do?
Absolutely. You can go to a couple different websites. You can go to mattmarkel.com. That will have links to my media page. That also has a little bit about me. If you're interested in Spartan Radar, you can also go to spartanradar.com and see some of our products, see some interesting things going on there. I write about once a quarter or so, I write a letter from the CEO talking about things that I see in the industry, and providing some. It's not just like a sales pitch or anything. I basically try to provide some useful insight for readers on that. If you go to mattmarkel.com, that's got links to take you to my LinkedIn page and so forth. You can follow me on LinkedIn as well. So yeah, so lots of ways to get in touch with me.
That is awesome, Dr. Matt. And Dr. Matt, I'm so grateful that you took the time to come on this show and share your wisdom with me and the audience about what it takes to be successful as a CEO and all of that. And I do hope that you come to the show at a later time because I really enjoyed having you here.
It's been my pleasure. This is thank you for putting this whole project together. I think highlighting what you're doing is fantastic. Highlighting all the different uh, facets of what makes our land so great and what makes the entrepreneurial spirit so strong. It's keep it up. Great work.
Thank you so much, Dr. Matt. And yes, I will continue to do this because it's something I do believe in, like the entrepreneurial spirit of America. And I want to conclude this episode by letting my fellow extraordinary Americans know that, hey, look, there's an extraordinary within each and every one of us. It's our duty to awaken it and unleash it. Until next time, bye for now. Hey everyone, thank you for watching Extraordinary America. If you like what you see, please do subscribe to our podcast and share it with others. Remember that the best investment that you can make in your lifetime is in your own financial education, for it is knowledge that truly sets us free. Also, remember that inflation is diluting your purchasing power, which in turn increases financial bondage. The practical thing to do is to protect the loss of your purchasing power and invest in precious metals or the right cryptocurrencies. Lastly, never forget that you are an extraordinary American. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.